Ladies and gentlemen, TNF Podcast, like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications. All right, we got some upcoming shows. We're Halloweening it a little bit. Let's see here. On the 27th of October at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we have Rob Turner from Torch Runner. On the 3rd of November at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have Chris Sampanakis from Sky Came Falling. That's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. On the 10th of November at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we've got Mark Scandato from Shutdown. That's, like I said, also going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And as you can see here, I have a merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Co. You can go to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. We got some really cool shirts up there designed by actually my guest, one of his bandmates and one of my longtime friends. So please go over and support. That would be amazing. Let's see here. Let me just throw up a few samples here real quick. And coincidentally, this girl was also in the Violent Life, Violent Death video. Let me show you here. We've got the Scream, Glow in the Dark. That's Ashley Rogers. We got Bullet with Steve McQueen. We got the Black Flag logo, of course. We got the Psycho 2, and we got another Scream. But that's just a handful, so check it out at hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use code 20 for 20% off your entire order. All right, so earlier in the week, we tried to do a live stream, and I'll go ahead and be a little personal here. I'll just carry the weapon, the spear gun. So yeah, we tried to do this earlier in the week and had some technical errors on my end, i.e. I forgot to hit record. So we did a whole awesome recorded conversation in person that kind of got lost, but we're doing it again. So it'll be awesome. And I've known this guy for quite a long time. We used to share the stage together in some of our previous bands. He is been doing a new band for quite some time now, many years, and they've had about 6 releases under their belts. And really, really awesome guy. He's very intelligent. He's very talented, and he's got a lot to say. And I think what they're doing is great. I'm so happy to see every time they have a new release. I think it's awesome. Like I said, got the pleasure of directing a music video for them. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Benham. Benham, what's going on, bro?
Chilling, man. Appreciate the intro. That was very nice.
Of course, man. Got to dap you up, you know?
Yeah, man, absolutely.
So, absolutely. All right. We did the show like earlier in the week, like I said, and lost to, technical errors and whatnot. But, typically the first question I always ask everybody on the show is, how were you exposed to music? Did you play in a band? Did you have siblings growing up? And then specifically segging into, how did you get into hardcore?
Man, honestly, for like the first, let's say 10 years of my life, I kind of just listened to like what my parents listened to. So that would be like, which wasn't bad actually, like Steely Dan, Doobie Brothers, stuff like that. I want to say like right around when I hit middle school though, I kind of branched off and started listening to my own stuff. And Green Day, Offspring, I don't know, all the bands back then that were popular and stuff. So, and I kind of got my foot into like punk rock, which started it all, and went through some stages, including a ska stage, to eventually get back into hardcore.
Nice. And did you know that the Doobie Brothers, when they sing China Grove, it's not about China Grove in North Carolina? Did you know that?
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Yeah, the China Grove, because I thought that for the longest time, and I guess my dad told me there's another China Grove, and I think he said it was in Texas or something like that.
Oh, that's funny. To be honest, I hadn't even thought about it. So.
Oh, false advertising, Doobie Brothers. What the fuck, man? So okay, you listen to your parents' music. I think most of us probably did. At the time, I don't think I appreciated my parents' music more so than I do now, because it's like you get older, you mature, your tastes change, and then you start to see some of the progenitors, like the bands that, came before us, and you're like, oh, this isn't half bad. Oh, I kind of like this, And so you said that led you into punk and then ska, and then you actually played in a band when you were in high school with, I guess, some other members of later hardcore bands?
Yeah, so high school, met Kevin Markey sophomore year. Um, we both wore straight edge at the time, and that's how we kind of became friends and all that. He actually saw me wearing a 311 shirt, and he wanted to come up and make fun of me for it. So when he came up to talk to me, he
That's
noticed
pretty
that.
easy to do, by the way.
What's that?
I said that's pretty easy to do, by the way.
Yeah. So, but the catch was that so he comes over to me to make fun of me, and then he sees my shirt, and there's a big like red circle with a line through it, and I guess he thought that was pretty cool. So, granted, I was a big 311 fan once upon a time, and actually, you know what? Like I've gone back and listened to like Grassroots and stuff, and it still holds up.
I'll tell you what, like their Cure love song cover is not terrible. It's all right.
No,
You know?
not one of the better
And the
covers ever.
musicianship is pretty solid for the most part.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, they're good at songwriting, very good at
Yeah.
all very talented guys. So
311, you guys were making fun of or he was making fun of you, and then you guys kind of got connected, and then what happened?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we became friends, when all that went down, and we were all kind of like into the same stuff. We were into skateboarding, we were into like punk music and ska, and hardcore and all that. So we ended up starting. We had two bands back in high school. The first band was a ska band, and I want to say I don't really count it. I mean, we played a couple shows. I think one of them was Kevin's dad's birthday. But that lasted for maybe like a year or so. And then we decided that hardcore was way cooler, and started a band called Second Nature our senior year in high school, and kind of went from there.
And was this the band that Adam Morgan of Hopesfall was in?
So before I met Kevin, I went to a different high school. I went to Providence, and that's where I met Adam. And Adam, he was on like, we were all kind of on the same journey and stuff as far as music goes. So it was a lot of us just being like, hey, we've heard this band before, that band, just like introducing each other to new stuff and all that. And so from Adam, I found about like Five Iron Frenzy, for example, or the Supertones. Focal Point, is another big one. So
yeah, we were talking about that, a lot of the Christian hardcore and punk rock and the like. They were killing it back then. They were absolutely like dominating, and like just such solid bands that you could even like, if you weren't a Christian or anything like that, you could still look at them and be like, this is an awesome band,
Dude, I mean, you going back and listen to all that stuff, I mean, it still holds up. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't tell that a lot of it is, God, what, 25 or at least 20 years old?
Yeah.
And all that. So, I mean, they were definitely ahead of their time. It still holds up. And the Christian scene back then was where it was at, which is pretty wild, but that's just what the case was.
Yeah. And it seems like it's kind of having a little bit of a resurgence, like there's a lot of bands that are, kind of from back in the day, like they, here recently at Furnace Fest, like Living Sacrifice played, and Zayo, and like No Innocent Victim, whom I got to see in like 2000, and fucking they bring the live show, man. They're fucking awesome, and like here I am saying fucking and Christian band in the same sentence, but they're great, but to speak of ska, you guys played with Violent Life, Violent Death. To fast forward a little bit, you guys, Mephistopheles, and I found that to be like the craziest like pairing. But then it kind of makes sense too, given like Mephistopheles like lyrical and subject matter. So to kind of like I said, to kind of fast forward a little bit. How did you? What's that?
It kind of works in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys did it like multiple times. And how did you guys get connected with that?
Man, so Buck at the Milestone has been super cool and has hooked us up basically every time they come through. I want to say we first played with them back in like 2016, and that was like such a big deal for me and like some of the other guys in the band, because Mephistopheles back in high school was like, they were probably one of my two favorite ska bands, like them and the Boss Tones.
Okay.
And so play with them after all these years, like my high school self was just like loving it, And so every time they come through now, Buck will hit me up and be like, hey, you guys want to play with them? I'm like, absolutely.
Wow.
So I think we've come 3 or 4 times now over the last 5 or 6 years.
Did you request to play with them initially?
No, Buck, God, I don't think so. That was like 2016. I think Buck just hit us up because he knew I was a fan.
Oh, okay. Buck, you're still invited on this show too, so hit me up.
You should do it, Buck.
Awesome. And so what was the response like for that? Like, given that it's kind of a ska crowd, with people like generally receptive and supportive?
I mean, it seems to have worked, you know. And back in the day too, it wasn't like unusual to have like multi-genre shows. Like I feel like the hardcore scene, the emo scene, or how about this? The hardcore scene, the punk scene, and the ska scene were all kind of the same
Yeah.
once upon a, you know.
Emo
So that
too.
kind of like, what's that?
Emo too, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it seems like that kind of went away, you know. And I don't know if it was just because people were doing it back then because the scene was smaller and everyone was just kind of part of the same community and that was different branches of it. But over the years, you know, shows definitely seem to streamline more where one genre, you know, is in focus. So it's kind of nice to play with different bands. And, you know, I mean, I do play in a heavy screamy band, but it's nice to like not hear that all night
Yeah.
long at times, you know.
You
And
know, you'll be driving home from a show, and it always seems like when you play in a band and then you play like a really heavy, like really noisy show, the last thing you want to hear is hardcore.
yeah, I'm gonna go home listen to some cigaros or something on the way.
Well, but
Polar.
then there's the balance of where, like, okay, I want to listen to something, kind of low key and soft, but I don't want to fall asleep at the wheel. So you got it's
Yeah,
that balance.
yeah, it's a fine line you got to walk there.
Absolutely. And I kind of wish they would bring those multi-genre shows back. So I think that's good that you guys were kind of like, receptive to that, and that an audience and a promoter were also receptive to that. So let's get into like how you started your hardcore journey. Now, you played be sure that I'm getting this chronologically correct. Was it Orchid's Chance in December or a Liaison it was Orchid's Chance, right?
Are we talking about how far back are we going?
Well, I mean, the progenitors to ARIA, I guess you could say.
So Second Nature would be the first hardcore band that I was in, and that was with Kevin in high school. A guy named Chris Hathcock, Zach Newhouse on
Zach was in
bass.
that band.
Yes, and so that band lasted for like maybe a year, and then a Liaison, who was another local band here at the time, they ended up losing. Actually, no, wait, not yet. They ended up inheriting Kevin and Zach from us. So Second Nature kind of went on hiatus after that. I want to say I joined a black metal band during that time called Requiem. That didn't last very long. But then Raver Chris and Monkey Skull ended up going to play for Undying and Hope's Fall from a Liaison. So they then recruited me to play for a Liaison too. And that was like 2000, I want to say 1999, 2000, something like that.
Okay.
And that lasted for about a year, and then maybe not even that long. And then we started in Orchid's Chance in December.
Okay.
Which was eventually ARIA, but with a different name.
Right. Got you. And then, the kind of the big thing was the fact that you guys had former Azazel singer Paul Genet. Now, how did you guys get connected with him?
Man, we just got lucky, I think. I want to say we're in the search for like a new singer. And I want to say I just wrote him an email or something. And he was like, sure, yeah, I'll come on down. And I think that's right, man. That's so long ago. I do know that he did see Orchid's Chance of December play their one and only show down in Somerville, South Carolina. And I want to say he thought it was pretty good. And I think that's kind of what helped as well to get him on board.
Okay. And, like the guy had incredible stage presence. So I'm sure you guys were just like, holy shit, like I can't believe we're doing this.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, watching Azazel play back in high school, like back before we started playing like Tremont and stuff, or even going to Tremont, we just kind of set up our own shows, for the high school. And so, either at like my parents' house, which was a pretty legendary one, I guess. Hope's Fall always calls it like their first actual show. And it was pretty sick, actually. It was like maybe 60, 75 people there in my parents' basement, and this is like 1999. And that still gets talked about today. And then we used to book shows at William R. Davie Park in South Charlotte, right down the street, and all that. And so we booked Azazel for one of those shows. And I want to say that was the first time I had ever seen him play. And I was just like taken back. It was just like awesome. Atmosphere, the sound, everything was so awesome. So to get him on board, in ARIA was like, we were flipping out. It was sick.
Yeah. And, to speak of Hope's Fall too, I don't think it was their first show. I think it was one of their early shows, though. when they played Cornerstone 2000. Did they ever tell you about that show?
I've probably heard some stories over the years, but they escaped me at this point. It's so long ago. But
They
yeah, I
were
mean, when they
incredible,
played that,
man.
that was
I got to
huge.
witness it firsthand, and this was when they were like before they were like Trust Kill or anything like that, and it was just like I think it's one of the most amazing shows I've ever seen, like hands down, hands down.
Yeah. And even them as a band, man, like they were doing such different stuff at the time, and Hope Saw was like a staple. They were awesome, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So
We all kind of anticipated them going the solid state like tooth and nail route too.
yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear that they were gonna do things, you know. I
Yeah,
mean, every show was awesome. Their stage presence was awesome. Like they would go crazy, and that's
Doug,
something you don't see
man,
a whole lot anymore these
Doug
days. Like
Venable, man.
the whole going crazy on stage thing is kind of dead, but we used to
Yeah.
love that shit, and bands used to do it, and it was awesome, you know.
Have you? Well, no, you guys played here with Zayo recently in Raleigh, and I always heard stories about Russ like falling on the floor and stuff, and I'd seen him before, but it had been years, and so I was like, well, I don't really remember that, and he did that shit, and I was like, whoa, this like this is awesome, and like they still got it, man. They still sound amazing.
I know it's crazy. Like playing
What?
with them too back in July was awesome. And Russ jumped up in the air and landed on his knees, I think. And I was just like, dude, like, when are you going to learn your lesson? I think he's gotten surgery on it at least once, from
Oh
what I've
God.
heard. But I
Yeah,
mean, those
we're
guys put on a
frail,
hell
brittle
of
old
a show.
men now.
Yeah. But, they'll put on a show, and age apparently is no thing. So
It's
I'm
not.
a fan of it. So can't complain too much.
Now, you guys also had kind of a lineup shift, and we kind of joked about this before. I was like, well, we shared members, and I was like, wait a second. I was like, no, you guys actually kind of like stole our members, but I say that like jokingly because in hindsight, I don't feel like it was that like big of a deal, because it kind of benefited both bands in the long run. So
Yeah.
how did that whole thing come about?
I guess we're talking about like with Scott and all that
Yeah,
and Justin.
Scott and Justin.
It's a funny story about Scott. So he was in Stained Glass, and I think it was one of their first shows at Tremont, like in the Casbah. And I want to say there was some drama surrounding the band at the time. And so, went to Tremont to check it out just because we go to any show anyways, no matter who played or whatever, we were there. So Stained Glass opens up the show, and I'm watching Scott, and I'm like, all right, this guy kind of rules. And I don't know how I feel about that, but so I ended up approaching him at the end of their show and was like, hey, do you want to come try out for ARIA or play for ARIA? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And then I think he made it so that he was like, all right, but I'll only do it if Justin plays bass. Or it was something like that. But either way, Justin got worked into the deal too, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And
What happened to
yeah,
Zach though?
what happened to Zach? Zach,
Yeah.
I think he just got over the music scene and stuff. He got real big into cars and all that kind of stuff. And I think he just grew out of it.
Is he still like actively playing? Because I haven't heard about him. I think since he left Aria.
I don't really know. I don't talk to him as much as I used to.
Okay.
He's so good at bass though. Like I'm sure he
Yeah.
could pick up
We,
start
we
playing
used
it.
to, we used to joke around and say like, man, he was like if Les Claypool was in Corn.
Yeah. Did you guys say that?
I think
Yeah.
so.
He was ridiculously good. He was so good. It was
He was
almost to
he
a
was
point where I was like, what's that?
he was nasty. Yeah, he was good.
Yeah. I had to get him kind of tone it down sometimes. But he was awesome.
Yeah,
And definitely adds for the stage flair and all that in the sound too. So
definitely, definitely. And you
yeah.
guys kind of, I remember, once you started doing music with Scott and with Justin, like you guys, I heard it and I was like, holy shit, this is impressive because I think it was I think it was definitely way better than like your previous stuff, and it was definitely more focused and definitely a lot more mature. And you guys did a Coldplay cover. Whose idea was that to do that? It was the Clocks Coldplay cover.
So that was actually Paul's idea from
Oh,
before.
oh,
Yeah. So we went through the lineup change and stuff and all that. Yeah. So we definitely had like kind of two different sounds. I want to say like the first half of us being a band with the As If Forever Really Exists release, we were like doing kind of more experimental stuff. I want to say. Like there really wasn't a whole lot of rhyme or reason to the songwriting. It was just kind of like riff salads with breakdowns, and it was more about like emphasis on the parts versus like the songwriting as a whole. So
Sure.
the second wave of ARIA was basically like, hey, let's kind of keep our sound, but streamline it a little bit more. Streamline it a little bit more, make it more coherent, and try to write like actual songs versus like riff salad.
Right.
So
And I think we had that discussion where bands used to be able to get away with this, or maybe we thought they could get away with it, but in hindsight, you go back and you listen to it, and it's like, oh, they just threw a riff and then another riff and then another riff, and there's no like cohesion. It's just awesome riff upon awesome riff with no real clear direction, and somehow it worked, with some bands.
yeah, I mean, Between the Bear to me is definitely a testament to that. To have like, it definitely helps to have like awesome musicianship, to try to like take advantage of those kind of parameters in songwriting. But yeah, I kind of lean more these days towards like actual songwriting, hooks and choruses and verses and stuff like that. Even though it's kind of
Sure.
difficult and hardcore, I try to like hold up to somewhat of a more pop formula these days, for
Sure.
better,
And
for better or worse.
well, no, I mean, I think you guys are really effective at it, and you're really kind of, a lot of these old hardcore songs are very bloated, and like you're just like a 7 minute song, like Jesus, like why? And so you guys, let's kind of talk about Violent Life, Violent Death, and like the formation of that. Like, how did you guys, I mean, there were some other bands in between there. I know Scott did that Deception of a Ghost, and there was a Black Pope and all these other bands. So, what was kind of the genesis of Violent Life, Violent Death, and what's the origin behind the name as well?
All right, so around 2006, I quit playing for ARIA because I decided that it was time to do like the grown-up thing and get a career and all this and that. So about 4 years into it, I decided that it's not all it's cracked up to be. Missed playing music, so I contacted both Kevin and Scott about starting a band again, and that was Black Pope that you just mentioned. And Black Pope
Okay.
was essentially like Black Pope was like what ARIA would have been if they stayed together. So that being said, songwriting is kind of wild sometimes, longer songs, stuff like that. And that band we didn't really do that much. We were together for like a couple years, and we were just kind of over like the whole prog metal stuff and all that. And Scott one night was like, hey, we should start a band that's just like kind of like the stuff we used to listen to back in the late 90s with like the Christian scene, and just make it dumb and heavy, kind of easy riffing, but impactful. And yeah, so just like actually write something that like what we used to listen to, back in the glory days, and kind of bring that back.
Sure. I mean, you guys are like I said, when I heard the newest incarnation of Aria with Scott and Justin, I was like, fuck, they're so good. And then I heard Violent Life, Violent Death, and I'm like, holy shit, like I think this is the best stuff you guys have ever done. So like thematically, what do you guys sing about? And yeah, what's the origin of the name? Somebody told me it was from Bloodsport. Am I correct about that?
You would think so, being that Scott came up with the name, but that's not true.
Okay.
So Scott, dude, like thinking of band names is so impossible, and we were trying to think of one for like, it was at least a month, and you want to find something that's never been taken before, which is hard, and then something that sounds cool or whatever. So I want to say Scott was watching something having to do with hockey on TV, and I think the announcer or someone on the TV said like Violent Life, Violent Death, or he had a Violent Life, Violent Death. So Scott liked that. He pitched it to me, and I thought it was pretty cool. I really liked, my favorite part about it was like the VLVD acronym and all that. So,
Yeah, it works.
so yeah, it works. And yeah, so stuck with it. And yeah, that's where it came from.
What does he sing about though?
Man, it's all very like conceptual. I don't even know how to explain this. You'd have to ask Scott himself. But Scott is I don't know. It's very poetic and stuff, and a lot of
Very, yeah.
abstract meaning behind things. And I think a lot of it can be open to interpretation and all that. But usually it's like themes regarding like death or love or struggles or stuff like that, you know?
Sure. I remember we had a song with Stained Glass, and it was about a kid at his church who died or something, and it was really poignant lyrics. I mean, Scott, I love him. He comes off as like a goofball sometimes, but like he definitely sings about some stuff that is a little bit more like esoteric and cerebral, I think, than people give him credit for.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely deep, you know, and it works. So
Yeah, definitely. And so, you guys have, like I said, had 6 releases, and you said you were mining from all these, previous bands that you guys enjoyed before. What are some like groups that you have been compared to? Like I remember you had said like Ringworm, and like when I heard you guys at where was it? God, there was a show, and I don't remember what venue it was, but I remember I compared you guys to like All Out War, like old All Out War stuff. So what do you guys typically get as far as like who you sound like?
Ringworm is always a big one. We get a lot of comparisons to like Hate Thousand bands.
Like the Belgian bands?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
like that German
Like
straight edge scene.
Archangel and stuff?
Yeah, we get a lot of that. And then like I don't know, Hatebreed, Life Once Lost. We kind of had like more of an Every Time I Die sound in the beginning when the band formed, so we get that as two. Zayo, of course, you know. Embodiment, Old Embodiment. Yeah, stuff like that. It's always interesting because we'll read reviews and stuff, and people always have like different bands to associate us with. So it's always kind of interesting to take a look and to see what people think we sound like.
Was there ever one where you were like, how do you get that?
I'm sure there has been. I can't really think of one that comes to mind right now, but I'm sure there has been.
I
Yeah.
remember Stained Glass Romance got compared to Clutch one time, and I was like, okay. It's like,
Definitely
I don't hear
not
it, but
expect.
okay. It's
Yeah.
Clutch.
Or they listen to the right band.
I don't know, man. Maybe they just hadn't heard enough music. I was like, I don't see it, but okay, I'll take it. So, um,
Yeah.
and you and I have kind of been on the like, we kind of see the world in a similar way in that there's a lot of things that are going on in the world that are not really on the up and up, and we've taken notice of that. We've done like independent research, and a lot of people scoff at that, but that's what you have to do as a responsible citizen, and so I guess you could say, quote unquote, conspiracy theories, so I always like to talk about them, and I always say that my favorite conspiracy theory is the Kennedy assassination, because I just think it's so compelling how our government could blatantly lie to us and try to convince us something that is other than the actual truth, and gaslight us into believing their whole narrative. So I guess you could say here recently we experienced like Hurricane Helene, and so what kind of why do you kind of gravitate towards those things, and what have you learned in your in your studies, and what kind of ones do you I guess you could say, like, what conspiracy theories do you like?
Well, I got started out with 9/11, and it took me like a month to kind of open up to it, you know. And at first, for the longest time, I just thought it was, I believed the story that we were told. And I remember people coming up to me. I want to say Kevin came up to me at one point and just kind of dropped the idea that the government could have been involved in 9/11. I remember just being like, no fucking way. That's crazy. How could you ever think that? Like, that's ridiculous, you know? And then 5, 6 years later, you just live and you kind of notice a lot of things weird with the world and things that don't make sense, And
Right.
so noticing things over the years, I was like, all right, I guess I just got into a point where I was like ready to, look into some information and give it a good fair try and all that. So I looked into 9/11 stuff thanks to a roommate of mine who moved in at the time, and he showed me loose change,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, holy crap! Like, you don't have to believe everything in that documentary to know that there was some shady shit going on. you know? So
Yeah.
after a month, like looking into all these different documentaries and like architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth and all these different like organizations that had formed for getting the truth out, because obviously some shady shit was going on. After about a month or two of that, I remember going to my brother at one point being like, dude, I believe officially that 9/11 was an inside job. And so coming to that realization kind of threw my world upside down.
Kevin
I ended,
Roddy from Stained Glass and
yo,
This Runs
what's
Through
up, Kevin?
Society's Finest is here. What's up, Kevin?
Yeah, what's up? It's been
Uh,
decades indeed.
it's crazy because you end up you're believing the whole time that what they're telling you is true, and then when evidence is introduced to the contrary, it's kind of like, what's that meme where the guy, I think it's like Tim and Eric Awesome Show, where it's like like
Yeah,
it's
right. Yeah,
mind blowing.
yeah. Definitely experienced my fair share of those. But too, like leading into it, there's just things that didn't make sense. Like it happened, and then we went and I invaded Iraq. Like, why did we do that? They had nothing to do with anything,
Exactly.
But back then was like a different world. Like people, the media was more like streamlined into the hands of corporations and stuff. You didn't have like citizen journalists. It was all like 5, 6 different outlets, all
Right.
controlled by the same entities.
Right.
And forgot where I was going with that.
Well,
But
we were talking about 9/11 and, like conspiratorial theories and, how you kind of got exposed to it. And, you said your favorite was 9/11. And then, I'll kind of like elaborate on that a little bit too. When I was in the military, like we were getting communiques from different, what they call like G sections. Like there's a G2, which is intelligence. And then there's like, G6, which is like communications and things like that. So we were getting communiques from higher levels saying that Osama bin Laden was planning to attack the United States with airplanes or whatever, and we were just kind of like, okay, like, and that stuff was pretty commonplace. Like some of that stuff would filter through very frequently. And when I was in boot camp, the USS Cole was bombed, so there was already that threat of the Taliban and Middle Eastern terrorist cells and whatnot. So you said you watched Loose Change and that there was only a few kind of networks, and you know um, I guess a question would be, how did you uh what sort of other like alternative media sources did you kind of start diving into to kind of heighten your worldview?
so back then, there was only really like a limited selection. I mean, you basically had Alex Jones, like 2009, 2010. He was like one of the only people back then, talking about these concepts and stuff, and different agendas that the political scene has versus, what we're being told by the media and all that. So Alex
Right.
Jones was one. Um, there's a podcast I would listen to as well called No Agenda. They've been going at it since 2007. They're also very like anti-establishment, anti-New World Order, anti-corporatist, and all that kind of stuff. They actually have one of their hosts is Adam Curry, who used to be a Headbangers Ball VJ back for MTV.
Yeah.
Yeah, very funny guy. It's a very funny podcast, very informative too. So that was another big one. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of any others, but a lot of it just comes down to like when you kind of see how the system works and what they're trying to do, you can like you kind of interpret more like what the media is really saying, what
Sure.
their articles and what they're getting at and all that. So yeah, it's just kind of like learning to the best of your ability how the system works, how it operates, what their agendas are, and then you just kind of jump around different news media sources to see what lines up or what that how that translates with all the different stuff they're trying to do, whether it's war with this country or that country or you name it.
Right. And I know we touched briefly upon the moon landing. Um, I tend to believe that I don't think we went to the moon. I think that we may have went into outer space. Um, Again, I'm not an expert, but based on what I have seen, and just kind of the nature of, for example, you got the Van Allen radiation belts right outside the Earth, right? And
Yep.
supposedly that's some of the strongest radiation, to ever exist. And I think every time they, like the Russians and the Soviets, tried to send you know, uh, animals or anything past them, they always ended up dying because of radiation poisoning. So that begs the question, well, how did the human beings escape the atmosphere beyond those belts,
From what I've heard, and I don't know if this is like true or not, but like the explanation I've heard about that is, I guess they like travel around it in a way. Um, like you can see pictures of how it kind of like comes out like this around the planet. And from what it sounds like, from what these people are saying, is they just kind of avoid it by going north and kind of up around it, and they get exposed to like a very small portion of it. I'm no astrophysicist. I don't know about this stuff, but what I hear, I
We
definitely have
need Neil
concerns.
deGrasse Tyson on here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have, some concerns about the moon landing too. The biggest thing for me is the footage looks obviously faked.
Yes,
Like, I don't know if you've seen the bouncing astronauts video. Have you seen that?
probably. Enlighten
There's a
us.
few. So it's like, it's hard to find now. I think a lot of the stuff's been purged from YouTube. But there's videos, if you can see, like the astronauts having their spacewalk on the moon, and they like will fall over on the ground, and then what looks like happens is they kind of like spring back up, like they're getting pulled up by wires or something.
Okay,
It's pretty ridiculous looking because they'll like straight up fall over and then they just get lifted back up. And so that definitely raises red flags for me. Like, I don't know about the
sure.
gravitation situation on the moon, but that just doesn't seem natural to me.
No, I think it's 1/6 or 1/8 of the Earth's gravity or something like that.
once, something like that.
Yeah,
So footage is definitely the biggest red flag for me. But I don't know, man. Like, and it doesn't help either too, because the 60s back then was like such a time of deceit. Like we were doing so much shady things back then, whether it was like the
right.
JFK and or lying about the Gulf of Tonkin to get into the Vietnam War. So that was like an era of a lot of deception back there in the 60s. So I think that's another reason why a lot of people are naturally skeptical of it. And I don't think it's a problem to be skeptical of these things. I don't think it's like a shameful act or something that's ridiculous. And I think that's a misnomer a lot of people have to get over. Like in the bottom line of stuff, like we really don't know much about
Right.
anything in the world, in general. So I think it's important to be humble and kind of like take a step back and be like, okay, maybe I don't really know what's going on with the stuff we've been told that everyone's supposed to, accept as belief. And it's important to ask questions because people in power throughout all of history have always had like dictatorial, things about them.
Sure.
They've like I don't know, just all throughout history the people who have run things have always been deceptive. So I don't see any reason why that anything's changed since then.
Sure. And you also have to consider too, like you had mentioned earlier, there were only so many information outlets. And I don't think the powers that be had anticipated, the internet and, the mass spread of, alternative media sources with people that are now actually doing journalism, actual journalism versus, this corporatized uh whitewashed sanctioned propaganda or whatever, what have you, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I tend to believe that a lot of it was because of uh they wanted to beat the Soviets, and then we wanted to, like, thumb our nose at them and be like, ha, we did it first, when truthfully the Soviets weren't even that interested in it in the first place. They're like, you go to moon, we will stay here and play balalaika and drink vodka, like, so um so I think there's a strategic aspect to it. I think there's it's a way for America at the time to, kind of show dominance over the USSR.
Yeah. And I want, and I definitely have heard things over the years, like with the Cold War going on, a lot of the moon race was about, bankrupting the Soviet Union and all that stuff, getting them to pour a bunch of money into a program just to keep up with us. So that would give us leverage over them, as far as the war goes and stuff. But
Sure.
getting back to the moon thing, like, I don't know. I really don't know. I've gone back and forth with a lot of different concepts, theories. I do know that something weird, is going on, but I think it's possible that we have been to the moon, but they couldn't show us the footage because there's weird stuff up there, whether it's aliens or weird monoliths and stuff like that. So I don't know. The whole thing is a big question, and hopefully maybe might get answered at some point during our lifetimes. But there's something definitely fishy going on with that, as with
Definitely.
most every government gets their hands in.
And that's what I'm kind of skeptical about, is like the aliens and the extraterrestrial thing, because um it's one of those things where I oh, I lost you. It must have been, oh, is it Big Brother? Oh shit. Here we go. I lost you for a second. I think Big Brother was listening in and said, "Nope, no more." So what I was saying though was about the extraterrestrials and the aliens. That's one I'm kind of less on board with, and that, I guess, because what would the advantage of concealing that information be? And maybe extraterrestrials or aliens are not so, um may not be the correct term, but like I tend to think there may be like interdimensional beings. You know what I'm saying?
hmm Yeah, I mean, and I think the alien phenomenon could be largely interdimensional, and I think it's possible that what people back in the day saw as angels or demons could have been different beings residing in different frequencies of existence,
Yeah.
which give them the ability to do things that we would think are like superhuman powers and all that, you know?
Hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, just like anything else, everything is such a mystery. And I think the fact that the talks of these things have stayed around for ever, decades, centuries, would make me like to think that there's something real to it, especially now that we've gotten to the point where the government is talking about it,
Hmm.
for better or worse. I think they have agendas and the reasons why they're talking about these things, but I think at the least, like, there is something to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's very strange rabbit holes you can go down into with the whole ET stuff. I indulged very greatly in all that, like 14, 15 years ago, to where I
Yeah.
was like obsessed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things when you do go down those rabbit holes, it's almost like overwhelming, and you're like, holy shit, I don't even know if I want to know all this shit. And so, um, we also kind of touched upon this, where like, what if, this is kind of like some almost like pot smoking banter right here. But it's like, what if people that are like crazy and like homeless and, talking to themselves, what if they're just really on another plane of existence?
yeah, man. I mean, everyone has their own perspectives and ways of looking at things and their own world views and all that. I mean, you could definitely make the case for, people who are they just feel like society is not for them. They're not down with the rat
Yeah.
race, everything that, we're expected of and all that, and just
Hmm.
checked out, and we may look at them as being in a really bad position, but maybe they look at themselves as being liberated.
Right. Yeah. Some of the, I've met some homeless people in the past, and they're some of the like freest people you'll ever meet. We look at them as they're in a kind of a disadvantaged position, but then it's like, I got no bills, I got no responsibilities. And this one guy was just like, I remember he was just thanking God that he was alive. Like he
Yeah,
had nothing, like physically or materially, like he was just completely, by societal standards, was downtrodden and destitute, and he just didn't have anything. And but he was like, I'm happy. I'm a happy person. It's weird how that works.
dude, I mean, honestly, we need more of that in the world. Like, I think people search for happiness largely in the wrong places, and I could see something like that as being like the ultimate test. Like, could you be in a position where people would normally think you're somewhere struggling really hard, but make the best out of it with your mind and your attitude? You
Sure.
know, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
It
definitely. I
Ways of looking at things are endless. So,
We did an experiment when I was at the Stella Adler Academy in Hollywood, and they said we had to go out and essentially dress like we were homeless, kind of dirty ourselves up, and basically sit outside the train station or wherever. And I went up next to a Starbucks that was on Hollywood and Vine Street, And I just sat there, and I was, sitting outside the Starbucks, and, I'd sit down, and I kind of look up, like, and, see people there. And this woman, she was in a big hurry, and she walked right past me, and she didn't even like acknowledge me. And then I remember she stopped, and then she turned to me, and she had like a chocolate frappuccino or something, and she just set it down right next to me. And at the time I was vegan, I was like, "Oh, damn, lady, I feel so bad that I'm not going to drink this after you gave it to me." But like, she had some empathy, and her, her heart like opened up a little bit, because, she saw somebody that she perceived as suffering, and she, did what she could at the time. And, that was cool.
Yeah, we definitely need more of that in the world these days.
Yeah. And
Just
I
people.
know we lightly touched on flat Earth for a second, and
Oh,
like I said, I I had my skepticisms about that one, and I still tend to believe that yes, we live on a globe, but I find a lot of the evidence compelling. Now, why do you kind of tend to disbelieve that one?
John. Because I think it's just very obvious. I mean, uh, it wouldn't make sense to me that all the planets in the universe are round, but ours is flat. But I guess a lot of people who believe in flat Earth think there's no such thing as space either. So there's that. But I mean, I don't know.
I guess to me it would be like, what's the gain? What's the benefit? Who
Well,
stands to benefit from this?
like, and I would. That's the first thing I would always ask these people. I'm like, all right, tell me, how does it benefit the system to lie about the shape of the Earth? And I don't ever get an answer. And
Right.
especially monetarily. Like, money is pretty much the reason why we do everything. Money and control. Like, I could see how it would make sense if the Earth actually was flat and we were lied to about it being a sphere. Perhaps, I don't know, but the whole it's just silly to me, man. And I think it was like, honestly, it kind of popped up back in 2014 out of nowhere, and I feel like it was a psyop that was kind of made to discredit conspiracy theorists across the board. So, for example, like, you hear people on the news and they'll bring up, so and so wacky fringe person believes in 9/11 and this or whatever they're talking about, and then they go and rattle off flat Earth and all this stuff with it to try to like make it seem like they're all just part of the same crazy group.
Right.
So,
Yeah, they lump that in to make it, it's the most extreme example of, conspiracy theory, at least in our minds. And yes, they group them all together in order. Oh yeah, 9/11, JFK, moon landing, flat earth. Oh yeah, of course these people are crazy. Look at the bizarre shit they believe in.
yeah, and that's what they do.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, like, you look at like Helene, and there's lithium mines there, so it makes sense.
I mean, I think there's definitely, cause for concern, at least, or to look into it. I mean, the government, the American establishment has basically, like, the way they operate is they go around the world and they pretty much destabilize nations, and then they bring their corporate people to come in and rebuild, and they take control of it. So I wouldn't doubt if, what happens over there is basically going to be a land grab that they get for pennies on the dollar to dig as much lithium or quartz zirconium, or however you say it, quartz zirconium, as they want. And I think I heard Governor Cooper the other day say something about some areas just shouldn't be built back. I'd like to know what areas those are that he's talking
Right.
about. You
Well,
know,
and I think they were even showing. I think, I don't know if you sent me this or not, or I just saw this independently. But in 2007, they were talking about, the heart machine, and like controlling the weather and things like that, and how it was possible. And I always pose this as an example to people. Like, okay, you take like the Japanese in 1945, right? The Japanese in 1945, oh, we've got this utterly devastating weapon. The United States was saying that we got this utterly devastating weapon that will completely wipe out a city. We just drop a bomb and boom, you're done. And the Japanese are like fucking thumbing their noses at them. You're fucking full of shit. And then it happens, and then it happens again. Those people couldn't possibly imagine that that technology was available at the time.
yeah, no way. And I mean, and that's just kind of like a human thing. I feel like it's just to dismiss things, that
Right.
are dangerous but are out of sight or whatever. Um, yeah, I don't know. The technology the government has is crazy.
Right.
And as far as like, nuclear bombs aside, with the weather stuff and all that, I mean, we definitely have technology. You know, I mean, we don't have anyone coming out from the DoD being like, "Hey, we used it on this hurricane or that hurricane for whatever," you know. But we do know for a fact, at least since I want to say 1947, that we've had technology to manipulate the weather, and it's gone through many generations. You know, from
Sure.
dropping dry ice in the clouds to now using like Tesla-based, you know, frequency, um, like frequency technology and stuff like that.
Sure. And, to speak of the DoD, they just issued some sort of statement today, some sort of mandate or legislation. I don't remember, what it was specifically and, what kind of statute it was, but it was basically saying that the military had the ability to join up with civilian and state law enforcement in order to use lethal force against American citizens. This is the kind of the narrative that's being pushed through. And then it's like you go to the like Google and you go to the fact checkers and things like that and it's like why the fuck am I going to believe some fact checkers that are put out there by the same organizations that are already lying to us? They're like, "No, this isn't true. This isn't true." And it's like, "How the fuck am I supposed to believe you?"
That's what's crazy, man, is it's very hard. Like the internet has kind of screwed things up for them, but at the same time, it's offered a system to really like manipulate people. You
Sure.
know, like Google, you know, you got like big tech and all that. They're all on board with the corporate establishment setup and all that. They're all on board with these globalists, you know, and you can't really search and get real information through a Google search. You know, you try to search certain things and it doesn't pop up. They're blacklisted. So
Right.
I don't know what you do about that. You know, and a lot of these fact checkers and stuff, Snopes, for example, it's all just establishment. Uh, Damn, I can't think right now.
Well, and like
Like establishment.
even Snopes has to go back and like reverse, claims that they made where they're like, no, this is factually incorrect. And then it's like when it becomes politically inconvenient for them, then they're like, and they're forced to tell the truth. They're like, oh yeah, and by the way, we never said that. Like, what are you talking about? And it's like the country has this like collective amnesia as to where it's like, yeah, they did say that. Yeah, they did say this.
Dude, it's crazy how it seems like they just expect people to forget things like every 3 months and all that because the flip flopping that's done is just shamelessly insane. You know, it's
Yes.
crazy. Their feet are never held to the fire over it. People just keep going along believing with whatever they're saying at the time. You know, that's wild.
It's so easy to distract people too. You're just bombarded with information, you're bombarded with stimuli. You've got all these like, fucking like celebrities that are saying this and saying that and uh what was the big one, the One Direction guy, his death was some sort of conspiracy, which I don't totally rule out, like I think that a lot of these people, they have some sort of political clout because of their status as a celebrity, and to off them or to do something like that. I mean, a lot of these people, we talked about Mockingbird before, Operation Mockingbird, to where it's like, a lot of these people that are in Hollywood are paid assets. They're paid actors, and they're currently upholding the narrative of the establishment. And it's like, what sort of dirt do they have on you, huh? What do they got on you?
50% chance they're all on the Epstein list. I feel like all the people are coming out. They all got some kind of like skeletons in their closet, and they're all just controlled. Especially Hollywood and the entertainment industry is like, I know it sounds cliche, but it's like literally demonic to the core.
It totally is. It's my guest that was on here a while back, Joe Bando, he's a comedian. We have had this discussion about how there's like almost like low vibrational energy out there to where, I mean, it's on a fucking fault line, like it almost seems like that would be kind of just naturally disruptive anyway.
Dude, it's so bad. Just like the themes are just like, and I'm not even someone who's like necessarily a religious person, but I think all the themes are very satanic, you know? And it's just like, it's all about hedonism, self indulgence,
Yeah.
me. Like it's all very narcissistic, and the imagery is all very like, just kind of, it's all very satanic. I feel like, especially when you watch a lot of these like Grammy performances and all
Yeah.
that. It's wild.
Yeah. No, I mean, was that one Little Nas X where he's like fucking the devil or some shit like that? I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
like this is
like
this is
that or
beyond Rosemary's Baby, you know. This is beyond a movie. Like this is just like blatant. Like okay, this is wild.
crazy. I mean, even the Olympics, man. And I know it's cliche or whatever, but it's like it's there in plain sight. Like it's
Right.
crazy. You
Yeah.
know?
And you know, like I'm not a Christian, but like I believe in God, and I'm like, how do you guys not see this? Or you know, maybe they do, and maybe they just celebrate it and bring it in and like entertain it. And that's like, you know, the closer that I get to, you know, I don't have any kids or anything like that, but the closer I get to like, you know, possibly starting a family someday, it's like I don't want them seeing this shit like at a young age, and especially in like a public forum like the Olympics, you know, and like, yeah, okay, Gojira played. Yeah, that was cool, you know, but like, you know, all the other stuff that kind of went along with it was just like, this is inappropriate on in a national forum. And that's weird to say as like hardcore like
Yeah.
musicians and people
That's
that grew up like listening to like some of the like quote unquote evil music, you know?
why we keep all our shit, on the down low away from all the little kids.
Listen to Slayer records in private, right?
Yeah, much.
You know, to kind of go back to the Helene thing, you know, let's just say that it wasn't a conspiracy, right? Let's just say that it was a natural occurrence and whatnot. I can't remember who said this, but I think I want to say it was like Jane Fonda or somebody. Like, don't quote me on this, but they said that you know you should never let a crisis go to waste.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's like one of the establishment's main speaking points.
Yeah,
And
like
that's
with
another
Maui and all that shit.
because they benefit off of catastrophe.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
like of course they're gonna try to come in at some point and try to like just stage their own things as these people are like literally pure evil and they just care about their own pockets.
yeah. That's why you know my dad and I were talking about Kennedy today. I mean, he thumbed his nose at them for you know wanting to go in Vietnam, and you know that's why they popped him. You know, it's like it's
Yep.
pretty clear to see like they love conflict because they profit from it, and you know it's just another way to keep perpetuating the movement of the machine.
Yep, and that goes for everything. It goes for healthcare too. Like they don't want to actually cure anyone. Like I saw something the other day. It was like Pfizer's been around for forever, something like over 100-year mark or something, and they never cured one single disease. But that's just not the way these people handle things in the industry.
Right,
Like want to treat it like they just want to like manage it, and
right,
keep it under control and give you therapies you take for the rest of your life to keep it
exactly.
under control so they can keep making all that money. And I know it's wild to think like, I don't know, how could people do that? But this is literally the world we live in, and
Yeah,
people ask people, especially in powerful positions, to do fucked up shit. So like
right.
all the industries are about getting money. They don't actually really care about people, and I think that's shown all throughout society in a multitude of ways. Like just the
Sure.
impact of everything is crazy.
Yeah.
It's impossible to afford anything. House prices are going through the roof. Like it's just madness out here, and all of us down here are struggling, but it makes all the people up there richer.
Right. And you know, if you don't have any integrity or moral scruples, you'll just do whatever it takes to get ahead. You know.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's the problem too, is a lot of people kind of get caught up in the rat race and they want to do good and stuff like that. But then next thing you know, they've kind of been compromised by this big corporate machine and they don't really realize it, which is what happened to me. I had a corporate job once upon a time. And the way they would make me like lie to all of my reps, so they could have things look this way or that. I'm like, dude, it's literally the same thing on a grander scale that they're doing with the world,
Yeah.
or so the fact that some people can think that that conspiracies are not a thing is crazy because they happen all the time with
Right.
everyone. It's
Right.
as simple as, hey, I'm going to tell you this, but we're not going to tell this person.
Right.
It's like, no, if people think conspiracy is like, I don't know. I don't know if they have some kind of different definition of the word or what, but I mean, it's very in human nature for those kind of things to happen. They've been happening forever.
Well,
So,
and the whole term conspiracy theory came from the Warren Commission, you know, who investigated the Kennedy assassination, and you know, Chief Justice Earl Warren, who was a political opponent of Kennedy, was like, nah, he was like, nothing's going on here. Like this is a conspiracy theory. And so, yes, like you said with, uh, the flat earth thing, like that was intended to discredit anybody that wanted to question the whole narrative that commission was putting forth.
Yep. 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 So, yeah, I don't know. It's a wild world out there. And I think a lot of people are actually waking up, I think,
Yeah.
especially over this last year, it almost seems like conspiracy theories are kind of in a mainstream light now.
Sure.
Right? I can go on social media and stuff, and like people bringing up all kinds of things that you would have never talked about or seen 10 years ago. And if you
Right.
did, pointed and laughed at you, which I definitely got my fair share of back then,
Yeah.
but I see the tides turning these days, and it's very inspiring. And I would like to think we have good things coming in the future. We just gotta take down these bad motherfuckers who've been controlling shit since they assassinated JFK.
Yeah. Well, he shit even before that, I mean, you look at like, the Spanish American War, like they were not 100% certain whether or not the USS Maine. So for those who don't know, the USS Maine was in, I believe it was Havana Harbor in Cuba, and it just exploded. And they weren't sure if it was just an accident or if there were actual, conspirators or people that were colluding against, the America or the Navy or whatnot. Regardless, they still ended up, starting the Spanish American War as a result. And I mean, it even goes back further than that, and it's just, people will take advantage of a situation in order for some sort of strategic or financial gain, and, my dad and I were having this conversation the other day. It's the people versus the machine. It's not left versus right. It's not liberals versus conservatives. It's not fucking Democrats versus Republicans. It's the people versus the fucking machine.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And that's why I think it's been super awesome to see. It's kind of like party lines have dropped. It's yeah, like you said, it's not Republican Democrat anymore. It's either pro-establishment or anti-establishment.
Yes.
I think what's been going on with the right is pretty fascinating because it seems like all the main people, in MAGA, if you want to call it that, or Trump's circle, are all like disaffected Democrats who are sick of the system,
Right.
sick of the establishment. They're sick of all the games and shit and just all the lying and manipulation of everything. So to see like people from both sides of the spectrum come together to run up against the machine is fucking awesome.
This is
And
the real rage against the machine.
it is. And I think a lot of people still need to realize that these people on the left are the machine. Like I know the left portrays themselves that this or that person is fascist and whatever, blah blah blah. It's like
Right.
no, you guys, and you're either projecting or you're just like I don't know, telling on yourself. I don't know.
And people are really, and I know history is kind of written by the victors, and history is, can be tainted and polluted and whatnot. But I mean, you need look no further than 1960s Cuba, in which, when Batista was deposed from Cuba, Castro came in, and all it was always so funny to me seeing, as I kind of like started to wake up out of my, political indoctrination, and see like, oh, people had shirts of like Che Guevara, like Rage Against the Machine had that shirt of Che Guevara specifically, and
Yep.
like these people were like, they did not have the same values, and they did not respect the rights of the individual the way that the United States does. For example, like if you were LGBT in Cuba, they would fucking kill your ass. If you were an artist, if you were a performer, if you were anything beyond what they deemed to be part of their whole narrative and strategy, you're fucking dead. And like, so people don't really understand like how great it is to be able to like, essentially do what the fuck you want.
Yeah, I mean, despite all the problems we have with the, those who run this country, it's still awesome.
Yeah.
Like in the with things, it's still really good. Like if you ever take like a cruise to some third world country and you go like deep into the heart of Jamaica or something like that, for example, it's like it's kind of embarrassing, the things people complain about here in this country because those people have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They're living in like 4 walls of cinder blocks with a tin sheet, roof, tin sheet of metal roof, and no running water, and it's just like it's insane. It's a whole
Yeah.
different world, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, if you've ever been to like a former communist nation, like I remember going to Poland a few years ago, and like I mean, they're doing a lot better now, obviously, but like you can still see remnants of where all the buildings were the same, and like like just the state of disrepair that they're in now, like just paint chips all off it, and just looking completely like shoddy and like in
Yeah,
need of upkeep, and then like you know going to West Bengal in India, where it's like the communists controlled that province for many, many years. And there's like, I even was so insensitive to say, like, what the fuck? Why don't they have any infrastructure here? And like, my Hare Krishna guru was saying, like, look, they were controlled by, the communists for many years. And like, so they just didn't, there was no emphasis on roads or, running water or things like that. They didn't do it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've had it good in this country for a really long time, and I think when something like that happens, it's real easy for people to kind of like lose sight of what values are important and stuff, and running a country and all that.
Right.
Like, the reason why this country was founded and the rules it has is because people throughout history, running countries have just always been dictators and just pieces of crap with way too much power, So that document is extremely important, and it's extremely important that we keep it intact. And yeah, hopefully we don't have to go through any hard times in the future to understand why all of that stuff is so important.
Sure. And if you want to change it, there's a process called an amendment. So,
Yep. Yeah.
it is possible. We've done it many times, So, um, uh, there was a documentary that you had showed me, and it was called Everything is a Rich Man's Trick.
Ah, yes.
Fantastic. I highly recommend that.
Yeah, that's definitely. I want to say that was one of the documentaries I checked out back in the day when I was getting into stuff. Either way, yeah, a lot of good information in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't typically talk about a lot of this stuff on here, but it's nice to have kind of a kindred spirit who kind of understands these things, and maybe you'll learn something today. Maybe you'll be enlightened to kind of, find alternate alternate sources of information, and so, back to violent life, violent death. What do you guys kind of got planned for the future? What do you guys got as far as, are you going to be recording new albums? Are you going to be playing new shows?
We're gonna try to keep playing and recording and stuff for as long as we can. It seems like at this point, after I quit back in like the late 2000s, didn't like not playing music. So I think we've all agreed to try to keep this going as long as we can. But that being said, we have a show coming up November 20th. It's going to be a benefit for victims of Hurricane Helene. And other than that, just trying to write some music and stuff, and probably put out another EP and keep it going, man.
Yeah. And where is that show?
That's going to be at Snug Harbor here in Charlotte on
Okay.
November. I think it's a
And who's playing that as well?
Um, Reveler, Bridge Burner, Navtech. It's a bunch of locals from around
Okay.
here. We're
Cool.
headline. And
And one thing that I always have to ask, because I spent a few years in Hollywood. Meet like media, obviously not conspiratorial. We kind of ran that one into the ground, but like just regular like television, movies, music, books. What do you got?
man, television wise, I've kind of just been like going back and just watching old TV series that I really loved back in the day, because it seems like nothing really comes out often that's worth a shit these days.
Yeah,
So currently watching Fringe again. Have you ever seen Fringe?
I've not.
Ah, classic.
Okay.
J.J. Abrams back then was the man. Before that, I watched Lost. Did you ever watch Lost back in the day?
Okay. I
Ah,
was really into the premise behind Lost, but then when the dinosaur came out and ate the pilot, I was like, nah, I'm done.
John, you got to go back and watch it. That was the
Oh,
back and
okay.
watch. Got
All
to go
right.
back.
So Fringe.
Fringe, yeah, finished Lost. I don't know. That's kind of it for the TV. Music wise, I haven't really been listening to much heavy stuff lately, although I did recently check out the new Judiciary that came out last year, and that's pretty damn good.
Okay.
That been listening to some Muse lately too. You know, every now and again, I'll go back and listen to stuff I used to listen to back in however long ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and wear it to the ground for a month, and then I'll go find stuff.
I do that shit too. And you know, you were telling me like Muse is almost like a U2, you know, and like I had to defend U2 a little bit. I think Bono and crew are insufferable now. And I don't think they've had a good album in a fucking long time, but like those first few albums they did, like Boy, October and War, fucking great. Like fucking amazing.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, my uncle listening to U2, and I thought it was good. You know, I thought it was
Yeah.
catchy.
Yeah, man. It's good stuff.
But I liked it. It seemed pretty hip at the time, you know. But yeah. So Muse, who else? I don't know. Listen to Cursive not too long before that. Um, it's hard for me to kind of find things that I like with new stuff coming out these days, and I don't know if I'm just like an old bitter dude who's kind of stuck in what I used to listen to or what.
Your priorities are different.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I never got a chance to ask you about Rings of Power because I know you're a big Lord of the Rings fan.
I tried to give it a shot twice, and I couldn't do it. I
Yeah.
just can't do it.
It
It's
doesn't follow any of the Tolkien lore, really, does it?
You know, I'm not sure. From what I understand, I think, you know, to an extent it does. It seems like a lot of the stuff in that show goes back to like, I think like the very first scenes in the first Lord of the Rings. I don't remember what the name of that era is. But overall, though, it's just like, it's very polished. It looks very overproduced. Like, it doesn't give you that nice, like, kind of dark and gritty feeling, you know, like the original Lord of the Rings movies have. And you don't really realize that either until you go back and watch them. It's like, wow, these are
Yeah.
actually and stuff, you know, but all of that's just like gone. And I know they messed with a lot of the cast. It seems like, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't like it. So I
Yeah.
tried times, and it's a shame because I remember hearing it was going to come out back in like when they first announced it in 2018. And like 5 years later, it finally comes out. And it's like, oh, what a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard that,
Now
you
or
know,
something.
I heard it was really disappointing. And I heard they're even trying to adapt the Silmarillion and things like that. I
Yeah,
don't
to a
know.
cartoon that's coming out, I think, or the Silmarillion. Is that what it is?
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was a cartoon, but yeah, I heard they were doing that's probably better, truthfully. But yeah, I was never a huge Tolkien guy, but I do like those first three movies all right. You know, I think they're very well made, but yeah, just from what everybody makes the Rings of Power sound like, they're just kind of very subpar.
Dude, it just seems like people have kind of run out of ideas these days, and they're like, what successful series can we take and just expand the shit out of it and ultimately ruin it?
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like so much stuff like that is happening. Even like,
Oh no, Big Brother intervened again.
I don't know, it's just crazy. But
Yeah.
as far as like new movies go, like, you know, the Dune movies have come out, and those have been fucking awesome. Like,
Yeah.
think
Those were good.
those are fantastic. But other than that, it's just like everything's either a remake or yeah, a remake, you know? And it seems like comedies are just gone. They don't exist anymore.
No, they don't. I wish they'd bring back like Zucker Brothers style, like slapsticky Naked Gun type comedies. You know, like that
Yeah.
shit was awesome.
Oh, fun. Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And you know, I kind of feel the same way about Star Trek that you do about Lord of the Rings, and that like there was a gritty aspect to it, but Star Trek kind of took it, at least with Discovery and Picard. They kind of like just made it gritty to the nth degree, to where it wasn't even fun to watch. It's just like this is dour and depressing and angry, and it doesn't encapsulate the spirit of the original series or the original movies or Next Generation or pretty much anything post 2004. And then they did Strange New Worlds that everybody's like, "Oh, watch Strange New Worlds." It's kind of like a return to form. And then they had the fucking Klingons in like a fucking K-pop band. I don't know if I ever showed you that shit, but it was the
No.
dumbest shit ever. Oh my god, I was like, this is cringy as fuck. And like, you know, let me just I'm going to go on a little Star Trek rant here for a second, but like, you consider the original writers of Star Trek, right? They lived through the Great Depression. A lot of them fought in World War II, and then they're writing in an era where, you know, the civil rights movement is going on, Vietnam is going on, things of that nature. And now you look at this level of Star Trek writers, and they like graduated college and they love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And that's what we're getting with like modern Star Trek. That's why they don't fucking get it. And this new incarnation, Strange New Worlds, it's they went the complete opposite direction again, but they just made it like satire and like harebrained and bozoish. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the newer
Oh
incarnations.
wait, no. All right. So I remember like they came out with some movies some years ago that J.J. Abrams did. Are they still coming out with Star Trek stuff these days?
Yeah, but they're series, and you know they kind of pumped the brakes on those JJ movies because the last one that they did, the Star Trek Beyond, was not very successful. You know, and but his one of his acolytes, Alex Kurtzman, whom I think they should fire. I think if they had a smart bone in their body, they would do that. He went on to do all these series like Discovery and Picard, and like there's a whole era of Star Trek between like the original series and the next generation that they have not tapped into at all. It's about a period of 100 years, but they keep doing prequels and they keep doing uh sequels, and they keep drumming up characters that they've already established and things like, timelines and story arcs. It's just like fucking leave this shit alone and do something new, you know?
It's like they're just trying to streamline like the fastest ways to pop out a product and make some money off of it, as it
Yeah.
seems. You know,
It's
it's
fucking depressing.
like the care and attention to detail and all the things that used to make movies great. Like it's all just gone.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's a money juggernaut, man, and I think, you know, to kind of wrap it up a little bit. Oh shit, hold on, I gotta. Jason Mills says, "Shout out to Joe Benham from Mills. What's up,
Yep.
dude?" To kind of tie it off into a little bow, um, they would behoove them to actually make kind of smaller scale movies and smaller scale TV series, and just really put a lot of heart into the writing and into the the characters and things like that, versus giving us some sort of commodity like fucking, I don't want to talk shit on McDonald's, but like McDonald's or like fast food or something like that, like it's very disenfranchising and very disheartening.
John, did you ever watch Battlestar Galactica?
The remake.
Yes,
Okay, I will say this: I haven't finished it.
dude.
And I need to, because I know that it was Ronald D. Moore who did Star Trek Next Generation. But my biggest apprehension from watching it was just remembering the '70s series and how like kind of
Oh,
cheesy it was, and
dude,
it's not at all.
that was like the holdup for me too for the longest time. Like I got this big like sci-fi phase, like late 2000s, and I watched everything like except for that, as far as like the main thing goes, because I for some reason I thought it was just like super cheesy because of
Yeah,
the stuff and all that. But dude, it is awesome. It's
I'm gonna
probably
have to.
it's like a
I just
top.
have to commit to it.
Dude, it's so good.
Yeah, I do like that actor that plays Gaius a lot. That guy was fucking awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and the chick, the Cylon or whatever, she was great too.
yeah. They're all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, yeah. So anyone you want to shout out before we move on?
Band dudes, if they're listening, family. I don't know. What's up, everybody? I'll shout out everybody.
That works. That works. Hopefully we can get some of the other guys on here. Would love to have Scott on here. Would love to have Justin on here if they're so inclined. So that's the invitation, guys.
Follow through. Come through, guys.
Absolutely. All right. So, Joe, I want to thank you again for showing up. Dude, this has been a great conversation. And I think we actually were able to kind of go into more depth than we were, when we tried to initially have it. So that's
Yeah, it's
fucking fantastic.
kind of nice having
Um,
practice.
so one thing I like to do is promote Hell's Heart Merch Co. As you can see, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use code 20% off your entire order. I'm going to run a little merch stinger here. And you can kind of get an idea for what we have. But yeah, please support. That would be fantastic. And Violent Life, Violent Death is going to be playing some shows here in the area. I'll be sure to post those up and all the links to their social media. I want to thank everybody who attended the live stream. Looks like we had a few people in here, and this was kind of short notice because we both had to make some adjustments and stuff. So, again, Joe Benham, you're fucking awesome, man. Thank you, and I wish you all the best success in your band and all your endeavors.
Thanks, John. You're very kind. appreciate you having me on, and we should do it again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Everybody, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Namaste. God bless. Be good.